Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope, the podcast of the newsletter based out of St. John's Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Chris Ansom.
And I'm Casey Dreamus. I'm the contemporary DPG.
No, it's DGB.
Dang it!
You were so close.
I wrote it down wrong, too.
I mean, it's even an email now.
It is.
You better get that right. You're never going to check your email.
DGP. Gosh darn it. Yeah, okay. This is just fun. I really doubt. I feel like people are probably like, I'm so sick of this bit.
It's not a bit. This is the real life. This is real life.
This is real. Sorry.
The other day, we were driving, and my son was playing on a Switch, and I was trying my best. I was telling Mike. So for those of you that do not realize, like, my car can function with something called Android Auto.
Nice.
And with it, I can actually use my voice controls.
Yeah.
And I can kind of control my music. I can tell it what to play, and it will play that song.
Nice.
And so I was trying to play the background music for the game that he was on.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. But you know what's even more hilarious? He was playing this level, and I'm not joking. In the second that he would give it to me, from the point where I would actually say it, I would forget it.
Yeah.
And it's like the shining something something. I kept calling it the golden, and it was just like, good gracious.
Yeah.
Like, I could not get it straight for my life.
Yeah.
I kept saying, play this, and he's like, it's not it. I'm like,
I know. I'm slowly. They always say, like my parents, or I should say, my mom and all that. She'll be that person who always the famous one is she'd say, oh, that Jack Human guy. And we're like, you mean Hugh Jackman? And she's like, no, Jack Human. We're like, no, it's Hugh Jackman, Wolverine. And she's like, yeah. We're like, yeah, that's not.
He's a human,
Jack Human. And there's a whole bit they did on Saturday Night Live where it was like the mom or the parent translator, where they have a little like kind of looks like. It looks like a metronome to me, but people probably don't know what that is. Like an old like little phone or something. And, and they'll say something and they'll be like translating to they're talking about Elton John or whatever. And it's pretty funny. But it's very true. It's very true.
It's very true.
It's hard. I'm having a hard time, but I have to admit, here's the hard part for me. I don't know if this is true of you. I really don't care that much about it. And when I was a kid, I probably cared way more about it, like the actor's name. And now it's like I'm not as invested. So I'm like, oh, what's that person's name? And it's not locked into my brain. I don't really care.
Oh yeah.
But I'm
and for me anyway, it's gotten really bad to a certain degree. Like, and that is kind of to some degree. That's like when I first went to college, if you would have flipped on the radio, I could have told you who sang what. Mm-hmm. Especially if it was anything modern. I also liked 70s rock a lot. So it was like, man, you throw it on the radio, I was like, oh yeah, that's who sings this. Mm-hmm. Even those same songs, I could not do that right now.
Oh,
it's
really?
like I just and it has nothing to do with like I still love the songs.
Right.
But it's just like that is no longer like the center of what I when I was that age, that was part of a huge part of who I was just like identifying with music. And now it's like it's just not that way anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and the same thing with movie stars. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Somebody will rattle off somebody's name, and I'll just give them a blank stare because I'm like, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
Are they famous? Because I don't know who they are. They could walk up to me in Walmart, and I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny. I mean, there's I will say my brother, he's one of those people that he almost does it almost to a fault of like my sister's quite younger than all of us, and she'll say something about like Snapchat. I'll never forget this because she said something about Snapchat, and my brother goes, "What's Snapchat?" I'm like, You're not that old, man. Come on, you know what Snapchat is. And he's like, no, I don't know what that. I've never heard of it. I'm like, you've had to have heard of it. You've had to, just on the news.
You
or
probably have an opinion.
There's got to be someone has had to say it. It's like one of the hugest apps. I'm not on it, but I know what it is. Or I couldn't even really tell you exactly what it is, but I know the name. You got to at least heard the name. But, But it just depends. I mean, he really doesn't care about that, so that's why. It's not important to him.
So thinking about things old and new,
Yes.
Actually, that brings me to my news story for today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good segue.
Right. Exactly. It really worked. It wasn't intentional, but it really works.
Yeah.
So one of the things I just love it when stories like this hit the airways. So actually I'll start this little bit here by going like this. Do you remember there was, and I want to say it was like one of the more recent TikTok trends, but I don't think it's been recent. Now I think it's like way dated.
Right.
Like that whole theory that like guys especially, several times a week for whatever reason will fixate and think about Rome. Do you remember that one?
I don't quite remember. I don't remember seeing anything about it.
It started with a gal going up to her husband and saying, "Honey, how often do you think about Rome?" And he's like, "Well, at least 2 or 3 times a day," or something like that. And then like as the bit went on, like all these, and it's like how TikTok and all those shorts, YouTube shorts or whatever, they all kind of work the same way. And it's like each of these ladies was going up and saying, "Hey, how much do you think about Rome?" And it's always, and I always in the back of my mind kind of wondered, like, is this legit or not? Because, as a pastor, I actually do dwell and think about Rome quite a bit.
Right.
And so I was like, is this normal? Like maybe I'm actually a lot more normal than I ever thought.
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't think so. But
again, I think it all depends. I mean, I'm a musician who runs a 20-piece jazz band, and I do video editing for a job and music at a church. And I don't think about Rome, I think, really ever. But
now there you go.
But that doesn't connect to me all that much.
Secretly, we actually know you really think about Rome.
I mean, I do think about the movie 300 quite a bit.
Wow, yeah.
Which, I mean, isn't exactly the same thing. But, I mean, that's a pretty...
I mean, they were close to Rome.
Yeah. That's the most fired up I think I've ever been after that movie. I was like ready. I was like, "Where's a spear? I gotta stab someone."
Yeah, right.
They pump you up so much.
A murderous rage.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, anyway, thinking about Rome, most people understand the volcano and what happened with Pompeii right around 79 A.D. And what I think a lot of people realize is that like Pompeii was not the only place that was impacted by this volcano. In fact, there was another area called Herculaneum that was impacted. All the ash and the stuff came down from and so the people were able to escape. It didn't murder them all or kill them all, but they were able to escape. But what it did is it buried under soot like all the things that they were using and doing in everyday life. Yeah. Which has always been a little fascinating.
Right. Like a time capsule.
Kind of like a time capsule. The only problem is that it kind of petrifies. Mm-hmm. And when it petrifies, it's some things are fine. Like if you want to look at a vase or something, like it's fine. A vase is a vase.
Yeah.
But if you want to say, I don't know, read a scroll, that's a whole different story.
That's probably harder. Yeah.
That's a little bit more challenging. Well, they found a massive library in Herculaneum. And they've never been able to read it. Never been able to read it for the last 100, 200 years, whatever it is that they dug this stuff up. They've made attempts. They've made stabs. Every time they do, they either break apart or utterly destroy the scrolls.
Yeah.
Because the scrolls are like petrified. They look like a block of either rock or kind of like hardened wood.
Yeah.
All rolled up and circular and whatnot. Well, a gentleman during the pandemic got bored.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah.
Did he just spray WD-40 on it?
How did you get this? Right. Fixed it right up.
They're all like putting in special chemical baths and stuff. And he's like, no. What you need to do here is just spray some WD-40 on it. Okay, sorry.
It's good.
Yeah.
And then duct tape that thing right back up.
Duct tape the sides of it. It's all good.
It's all good. It's all good. But no, this guy got bored during the pandemic. And he started researching and studying Rome because he is one of the guys that's like...
He thinks about Rome
He thinks about Rome all the time. And so he got really into this. And, well, he is one of the co-owners of a place called GitHub. Now, GitHub is kind of a free open source area that you can basically upload software and work on it and work on the coding.
Oh, wow.
And he's also got quite a bit of money.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
And yeah, right? He must be nice. And he's in California, the Silicon Valley and all that. And so what does a bored, rich Silicon Valley guy do if he gets huge into Rome in the middle of the pandemic, and he can't do anything. Well, he stumbles upon these scrolls from this city that was buried in ash. And while he himself does not know how to unwind these scrolls, he's made his life on open source stuff.
Right.
And so he loves putting a problem out and then do it. So he put this like $700,000 reward.
Wow.
For anybody that can read at least 4 lines from one of these scrolls.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And he even had tiers, like, the first person to get like a letter would get like 1,000, and the first one to get this, and then eventually, whoever could read a couple lines would get like 40,000, and up and up and up until you get to it. He was hoping that the AI technology would actually help them, and he was right.
Oh wow.
And of all people, now realize, now here's where it's really fascinating, and why this is people like me. I get all antsy. I was at home earlier tonight, and I was reading through the story. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But it has all these guys, for the last 100 years have tried to do this, and they've tried to do it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It was eventually figured out. At least the guy who won the 700,000.
Yeah.
A 22-year-old from Nebraska.
A 22-year-old from Nebraska. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. He created an algorithm that followed the cracks in the scrolls, and he realized after looking at some high-def photos, and he thought that the cracks were actually paint peeling back off when they solidified. And so he used that to program his algorithm, and then he let AI do the rest. And the AI was able to look at the various, bumps, and also start to look at how that would have impacted through pages and pages and pages. And this thing was actually able to unroll almost this entire scroll.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
And they found out it's some. It's a poet's work, is what it is, and it was a well-known poet. The name escapes me, but it's but anyway, it was just his work. But it unlocks all these scrolls. Like if the same methodology works with even a dozen of these scrolls. Remember, these are a dozen of scrolls that we've had for 100 years that we've never been able to read. We've never been able to look at, and realize like some of this stuff is going to work with Dead Sea Scroll stuff too. Yeah, like it's going to make some of this work significantly fast. And there's actually, even from another biblical standpoint, they found basically as a trash heap of scrolls and literature. And they found it a while back, but it's called Oxyrhynchus, and they're still. I mean, they're still publicizing some of these things. They're still like being read, and it just blows my mind, because again, you have old and new, right, all mixed into one. These guys are reading ancient Roman scrolls, but realize that that's going to impact even in terms of some of our biblical scholarship.
Yeah.
And what if some of these scrolls actually add some of that to our own church history?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this is not. I really do find the whole, like you said, the crowd. What do you call it? Crowd sourcing or crowd
open source.
Open source. I've actually really. That's basically how I do everything now. I just get on I'll get on Facebook and go, who has a good plumber? And I just get floods of people being like, I had this guy and he was great. That's how I do it, because I would rather have a recommendation or find someone who really knows. And chances are there's somebody out there who knows, who could figure this out, but no one's ever presented it to him. Yeah. And so that's really interesting that you just put it out there and someone figured it out. That's incredible.
Yeah. Again, it's really cool. A lot of people obviously got really involved in this and everything else. And, even this kid from Nebraska, computer science major, had a massive computer.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Some coding on it. And, and also realize, even these groups, while I'm sure everybody wanted the money, at the end of the day, being that it was an open source project, everybody had to share their stuff. Mm-hmm. And so... And that was actually a stipulation that he actually put in there, was that in order to win, you had to actually share what you did.
Yeah.
And so there's like no secrets, like, no hoarding your secrets and stuff. And that's actually part of it. Like, so they had this like Discord chat going with all this stuff. And I guess, they figured out a good way to do it. And I saw some pictures of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's, I don't know. There's people who always, that in school who always say they hate group projects, but I always liked it if I had good people and people who wanted to all work towards the same goal, It's, It's amazing what you can do as a group, versus just being on your own.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, like, this is one of those things too that I find interesting. Like, some of the books that I've read on like teaching theory and all that kind of stuff kind of go along the same line. Now, I've read them and they dealt more with math than they did with like religion curriculum or theology. Yeah. Although I've tried to maybe apply some of the principles, but like, honestly, group projects are really good, but they add a bunch of stipulations, So for instance, I'll just tell you a few things that I do like in my own classroom. Like, so no more than 3 in a group, usually, 4 if I absolutely have to, but usually 3 in a group. And they all have to have like board space to write. And they have to stand up. Whoever's writing has to stand up. No sitting down and writing on the board.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I also usually add the rule that whoever is holding the marker can't talk.
Oh.
Well, because usually you have 1 or 2 people in the group that like kind of take control.
Yeah.
But they're also the ones that want to stand up there and draw on the board.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you can't have both.
That's interesting.
And so it's like and this was a suggestion in a book on teaching theory, and that was like, if they're holding the marker, they're not talking, which means they can do all the drawing, but they can't tell you what's going on. So it's just kind of like interesting little tidbits, but like, group projects really can work.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
But you got to make it, even from a classroom standpoint, you got to make the goal, getting to the end and not, it's not a competition as if like I got to beat this other group over here. It's all about whoever can get to the goal. And if we all do it together, we're awesome.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
But again, this is all just stuff that's fascinating. You're going to be thinking about Rome now quite a bit.
Yeah,
You're
I
gonna be
guess
like,
so.
Rome.
Now I'm going to start. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop thinking about managing social media, and I'm going to start.
Who cares?
Just thinking about Rome.
Just think about Rome. Just think about Rome.
Yeah. I will say I think there is something to, like, as a kid I was always very fascinated by like weaponry and armor and like those old there's just something about that, like knights or like Roman soldiers with big metal armor and stuff. That's always, I don't know, there's something appealing I think to boys about that, especially.
Well, and I mean, Rome itself is truly fascinating. I mean, not just from a biblical standpoint, but really, even from a historical standpoint. Here you have a group that sold their soldiers off, and then finally it's like one day it just dawned on them, like, well, in essence, like, well, we could just go kill everybody and take over everybody's land. Like, we're good. Like, we can do this. And they basically developed one of the, at the time, the most effective and efficient military system known to mankind.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they developed a system of conquering where the people didn't try to rebel all the time.
Interesting.
And so they massive amount of land, and then they also were able to restore a sense of peace, which is like crazy, because you just don't think of like a big warriors being able to have peace, but yet they did. They brought about a peace with an iron fist, as odd as it might sound.
Yeah, I wonder, do you have any more specifics of how they did that, or do you like? I just wonder, because I mean, I could understand. I've heard of things like the group coming in, and if a land or an area is already kind of suppressed by somebody, like there's some like kind of warlord or whatever you want to call it, is kind of, like, I don't know, not treating these people well or taking advantage of them, and they take this guy out, then like everybody's like, oh man, these people saved us. Like, yeah, we'll go with you. That I can understand. I don't know if that's stuff like that. Or...
Well, again, in the ancient world is a difference, and of course, a lot of this comes down to my the biblical history kind of elements thing. But you think about like the Babylonians and the Assyrians, like their general ploy was to conquer, but then show to whoever you just conquered that you are the owner, like not them. They lost.
Yeah.
And so they would haul sometimes people into slavery. The Babylonians, like they took a lot of the people off into captivity. They left just enough.
Yeah.
But like the thing was always the same. Like, right, you don't have any people left. You can't revolt.
Yeah.
And so there's just not enough people here for you to actually have an uprising. And so that was kind of their motive as well, or their motif as well. What Rome did was different than all of that. What Rome did, and it was really genius. And again, even from the biblical examples, you can kind of see this, right? Rome would conquer a place and then just say, look, you're all Roman now. Keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. And that wasn't quite it, but that was kind of it.
Yeah.
Like Rome wanted the claim the land. They set up their own leadership stations. But by and large, they're just like, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
They didn't overdo it and suppressing them.
Well, I mean, think about it. Herod was a Roman.
Yeah.
But he was also Jewish. And so they made him, the leader of the Jewish area.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, he's going to understand the Jewish customs. He's going to understand the people that are gathered around him. Whereas Pontius Pilate really didn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously Herod the Great died, and history with him is all kind of funny and wonky. But like, and again, this is kind of what they did though. But they also had this iron fist approach, right? Like it was kind of like they had this thing that said, just don't mess with Rome.
Yeah.
Like, do your thing, be peaceful, be whatever. We're going to tax you. We're going to take a census, yada, yada, yada. But if you kind of act like you're going to do something like maybe we don't like, we'll just come down and smash you and kill you and destroy everything you love. Like, and it was like an iron fist. Like they would just come down. But again, people kind of liked that.
Yeah.
People liked that. Now, again, the Jews actually had several little mini uprisings all throughout. And there were definitely a couple times where the Romans came down and smashed it. I mean, even the destruction of the temple in, what was that, 70 AD? The Roman army stood outside of Jerusalem and said, hey, we don't really want to do this, but, make us, you make us. Our Masada, have you ever heard of Masada?
No.
Okay, so Masada is right on the edge of the Dead Sea. Okay. And it's what they call a Horst, or a Horst. Okay. Now, a Horst is like, you have a plateau edge.
Okay.
And then some of that plateau edge falls away. But in the distance is like almost an island of this plateau edge, right? Okay. The middle part kind of fell away, and you're just kind of left with like this island up in the sky. That's called a Horst. Okay. And Masada is a great, gigantic Horst. They actually put a fort on top of it. Mm-hmm. Then later, after the fort was no longer in use, Herod the Great came along, and he made his summer home there. Oh. Even ran an aqueduct, so like water went to it. I mean, really built it up. And then after Herod the Great kind of died, it kind of fell into disuse. Well, a group, and I can't remember, I think it was after the destruction of the temple, a group of Jewish rebellions, rebels. Yeah, thank you. I'm like over here going, I don't know my own language. What language? Anyway, so yeah, rebels, they took off and they climbed up, and there was really only one way up there. Mm-hmm. And they basically destroyed that. Wow. And they took over that fort. And Rome really wanted to get them because Rome was mad. And you don't, what did we learn today?
You don't mess with Rome.
They literally built a land ramp all the way up.
Oh, my gosh.
And once they got to the top, they could basically break down the walls of this fort. You know why? Because they didn't make the walls real strong. You know why? Who's going to climb up there?
Yeah, right.
So anyway, now when they broke up, they found out that everybody had actually committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, imagine being them, right? You don't have a way down. Rome is surrounding you, and you get to watch every single day as they're moving dirt and moving closer and closer and closer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you don't want to mess with Rome, so you don't want to get caught. And now you made them work for it, so they're really not happy.
Oh man, oof, that's scary. That would be very scary.
So anyway, but yeah, you can still see this land bridge. It's still there.
Oh, wow.
Like the dirt is still there, like going up the side. Like it's
interesting.
And so crazy. You don't mess with Rome. Is
Yeah.
basically what it comes down to. You just don't mess with Rome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in all this history has significance because this is part of Jesus' earthly ministry. Was all taking place. It was all Roman rule.
Mm-hmm.
It was all Roman rule, and you get to understand some of these political dynamics that are at play. And once you understand those, then some of the texts that are built around it make a lot more sense. Like sidestepping Herod, the son Herod, and then trying to go to Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate not wanting to do anything because he's already had a couple different revolts, and the Jews really don't like him.
Right.
And he's one of those things where, like, if the Jews could actually prove a case and go over his head, Pontius Pilate might end up dead. Over that, so it's like he's got to kind of, do his politics in a fashion as well.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. Gosh,
so yeah. all these dynamics are at play, and it's fun. Now Rome wasn't always one empire. Eventually, it was actually solidified much later.
Yeah,
a lot of people think Julius Caesar did it. He didn't quite. Julius Caesar did not do it. It was shortly after him, though.
Yeah. Interesting.
So,
that's the see. Now I guess I got to start thinking about Rome.
You're gonna have to think about Rome.
Well, I have. So I have a question, which I hope isn't too similar to a question I've asked before. But we've talked about kind of the chanting and stuff before.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you, because I shouldn't admit this, because somebody's going to be like, I can't believe this guy, because I've been at the church for 3 years, and I started doing this, working on the slides and stuff, and then I said something about, well, when the special occasions do we not do the Nicene Creed? And then you're like, oh, we do the Nicene Creed on now I'm going to mix
communion.
it up. On communion Sundays,
yeah.
and we do the Apostles' Creed on non-communion. And I, for the life of me, I don't know why, I just thought we always do the Nicene Creed, which shows you, I guess, how well I'm with it. I don't know. But I'm just mostly asking about the creeds. Do you know how many creeds there are, and what really determines what creeds are usable, or is it just kind of, does each church kind of use some different ones, like they kind of pick and choose? And is it, how do you make your own creed? Could you ever make your own creed and it be acceptable? Is that no, you can't make a creed?
Okay, so first of all, let's
start with the first. Yeah.
First, start with the question: what is a creed?
Yeah.
A creed is a statement of belief.
Okay.
So anytime you make an actual statement of belief, you are actually making a creed.
Okay.
It might be just a personal creed, but it's a creed.
Yeah.
So there are some religious bodies that say we believe in the Bible and no creeds. Well, believe it or not, the irony is that's actually a creed. That statement itself is actually a creed.
Yeah.
So even going to a church and saying that statement together in unison, that's a creed.
Right.
Your church does in fact believe in a creed. I don't know what you'd call that, but that's a creed.
Right.
Now our church accepts what they call three creeds, three ecumenical creeds. The ecumenical comes from our church history. Now, our church history, so in the early church, there was Christendom. And, there were different thoughts throughout Christendom. I don't want to make it sound like it was all one cohesive idea. Most of the differing thoughts were over minor things, things that we would consider minor. Most of the major doctrine was all agreed upon.
Okay.
However, throughout the history of the church, there were 7 times whenever some major disagreements erupted. Now, I say 7 times. That's 7 times before the actual split.
Oh.
And right around 10, I can't remember if it's 1049 or 1059. I always get the dates all kind of confused. But around 1000 AD, basically, Christendom suffered a split, sometimes called the Great Schism. In between, we had 2 sides. One went on the western side, and they called themselves the Universal Church, and then the other one went on the eastern side, and they called themselves Right Theology.
Ah.
Yeah. In Latin, Universal Church comes off as Catholic, and Right Theology comes off as Orthodox.
Ah.
And so you have East and you have West. Notice, by the way, with our conversation of Rome, Roman Catholic, right?
Right.
It's in the West.
Yeah.
But before that Great Schism, you had 7 major councils. Now, you had more councils than that happened, but there were 7 big ones. 7 councils where all the church, like all the church was invited. I don't think they all came. But
when
like
you say council, you mean like a specific event, like a gathering,
like a big gathering of a lot of bishops. Maybe not all the bishops, but a lot of bishops.
I just mean it's not just like our church council or our council of elders or something where like they just meet once a month or whatever.
Yeah, no. This is like a lot of the bishops.
Gotcha.
They're all invited. Now, one of the first ones that they had was to defeat this guy by the name of Arius. Now, Arius himself was not actually a bishop or a pastor. He was kind of an assistant in a church, but he had this belief, and it was. Look, this is where the Da Vinci Code actually comes from, like that movie, Dan Brown's book, all this kind of stuff, and it all kind of comes out of this because Arius had a weird belief, and he believed, as he used to say it, that there was a time when he was not. That is to say, there was a time when Jesus did not exist. Mm-hmm. Now, at first, that might sound like an innocent statement. I mean, I don't think so, but to some people, they're like, "Oh, what's the big deal with that?"
Yeah, sure.
Well, the implication is huge. Mm-hmm. If there was a time when he wasn't, that means he was created, and if he's created, he's not God.
Yes. Yeah.
And if he's not God, then how can he die for our sins?
Yeah.
Because anything less than God just won't do. Mm-hmm. And so the implications are huge if you really backtrack it. Well, Arius kind of threaded the needle on that one, but he used to have this little catchphrase that said basically there was a time when he was not. And so Christendom itself at the time was also experiencing a great moment of relief. Constantine in 300 AD had confessed Christianity, Constantine being the Roman emperor. Mm-hmm. And for the first time in pretty much all of Christian history, it was actually legal to be a Christian. Wow. And in fact, being that Constantine was a Christian, it also meant that it was politically favorable to be a Christian.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of times people look at our own climate right now, by the way, and one of the things that they'll call our climate, our current climate, is post-Constantinianism. And that's actually where that derives from. Basically, as our culture shifts and changes, it's becoming less and less socially acceptable to be a Christian.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for the first time, literally since Constantine, it is no longer favorable from a societal standpoint. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's one of those interesting little tidbits. But Constantine basically became a Christian. And as he became a Christian, there was a kind of a peace. Mm-hmm. And so for the first time, 25 years later, the church was able to actually hold a council. They decided to have a council to go against Arius because Arius was actually gaining traction. He was starting to gain some support. Not in a lot of people, but in some. There was some groups that were starting to buy into some of his stuff.
And you said he was not like he wasn't a member of the church, or he wasn't
a bishop. He wasn't a pastor.
Okay, he was a DGP.
I don't even know if he's up that far.
Okay, sorry. I started that specifically just to say that. Okay, I'll admit it. Okay, go on. Sorry, go on.
But no, anyway, so the council decided to convene at a place called Nicaea, and they convened in 325 AD. And so they met and they discussed all this over. Now, again, I always like to tell this because it's always fun history. This council was wild. Like, again, Arius wasn't even allowed to enter because, again, he wasn't a bishop, and it was like a bishops only kind of thing. Yeah. Constantine was there, at least for part of it, I know. And St. Nicholas of Myra was there. Oh. And that's where he decks Arius.
Right.
At one point in time, they actually convened and had Arius stand across. So legend has it that St. Nicholas leapt over the table and punched Arius.
Oh, okay. Well, that gives me more context because, I mean...
Yeah. Okay. And so anyway, basically what it comes down to is as they continue talking, what was really interesting is a lot of the bishops that had gathered there originally didn't know why they even needed a council. They were just enjoying the fact that they weren't, illegal anymore. And anyway, so they're like, you read some of the histories. It's really fascinating. A lot of them had gathered together and say, why do we even care? What are we meeting about? There's nothing big or earth-shattering going on. And then all of a sudden, one of the bishops stood up and tried to defend Arius, and everybody got mad and threw him out. like everybody's like, you said what? They're saying what?
So to them, this was just like going to like a convention. Like,
Yeah, well,
we're just having a great time.
Well, and they were they
Yeah.
were confused. Like, why? Why do we have to go here? They didn't understand. But then once the bishop got up and actually started talking, and again, this is where Dan Brown would say, "Oh, they had to vote to make Jesus God." And this is notice how he's kind of twisting. Realize like they threw the Arians out, like it was unheard of theology up until that time.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, this is bad.
Yeah.
Like, and so what they would do is they started to craft a statement of belief that as Christians they could all recite.
Ah, okay.
And they wanted to make it very clear that Arius had no place in that creed. So what they'd actually do is they'd actually take things to him and say, "Can you agree with this?" And he would like twist and turn sometimes, and he'd say, "Yeah, I can go with that." And they'd say, "Okay, not good enough." They go back and they'd rephrase it, and so this became known as the Nicene Creed.
Okay, interesting.
Council of Nicaea, Nicene. It all kind of goes, and so this is why some of the language, especially at the beginning of the creed, is kind of odd, right? The only begotten Son, visible of visible, all that kind of stuff.
God of God, light of light,
all
very
those
God of very God. That's the one that I always think is kind of a funny phrasing. Very God of, or very God of very God.
Yeah, and what they're saying is, and they're actually using very actual big tech terminology, especially in Latin and Greek, is basically it's the same essence of God, are ousia, like the same substance, and Arius refused to agree to that,
right? Because he's like not made,
all
and
of
he's
that,
like, yeah,
exactly. So that's how this now. Then, as interesting would have it, the very last paragraph that focuses on the Spirit, that was actually not in the original creed. A couple years later, if I remember correctly, it was at the Council of Chalcedon in 420, 450, something like that. So it was like a couple councils later. They agreed and they added that. And the eastern side of the Christian church really took issue with this.
Yeah.
And they took issue with a particular phrase where it says it proceeds from the Father, right? Okay, that's good. And there's a little phrase there, and it says, and the Son.
Yeah.
The East hates that phrase. It's called the filioque, and that's actually Latin for "and the Son," and they hate it. So if you were ever to go to a Greek Orthodox church, you'll notice that that's not in there. And in fact, some of them don't even have that third paragraph of the creed because they don't consider it legit, even though it was still done at an ecumenical council. But whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so I mean, I assume there's probably no actual legal law, but I guess you can change it as you desire, even though, there's nothing to really stop you from doing that. But
yeah. But again, so this is the formation of the Nicene Creed. Okay. It's very, very ecumenical, which is part of the reason that I want to say that creed on communion. Now, it's not like every church does that. Our church does, but my reasoning for that is because it was born out of the ecumenical councils. And it was the one where they basically said, look, if you want to be a Christian, this is what you're going to say. Yeah. Okay, this is your statement of belief. This is what Christians believe. And so I always say, if that's going to be our statement that we're going to rest on, then that's good. Now the other creeds are considered ecumenical as well. They were all accepted in terms of the ecumenical, in terms of the councils, but none of them were formed at the councils. The Apostles' Creed actually predates the councils. We're not 100% sure when it was written.
Yeah.
We see inklings of it in little bits and pieces. Some people say that there's bits and pieces of it found in actual verses, Peter or Paul was trying to say this creed. But we don't really find it all together until 120, 150 AD. But either way, it was obviously written well before that. It was considered the creed that was a summary of the apostles' teaching.
Okay.
Hence the name, the Apostles' Creed.
Apostles' Creed.
And the last one, which we only say one time a year.
Yeah.
Once a year, on Trinity Sunday.
Because it's not as good as the others.
It's 3 pages long.
Oh, right,
Single
right.
space.
Single space.
It's called the Athanasian Creed. Now, Athanasius was actually, if I remember correctly, was actually at the Council of Nicaea as well.
Okay.
By the way, Athanasius has a really interesting life. And if you're ever looking for like a good biography to read, I know there is one of Athanasius. I don't have one on hand. There's like one in an ancient writing of some kind, and it's almost autobiographical. But seriously, this man has an absolutely fascinating life. Like, try to find a book on this guy's life. He's crazy. I mean, he was like chased out. He was like chased away and had to run out to the desert, and like he lived out in the desert for some years.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was from a part of northern Africa, and no joke, and look, guys, I'm going to say something, and it's going to sound offensive. I promise you, it is not meant to be. This is literally what they just called him. They called him, and it translates as the black midget. He was apparently very, very short.
Oh.
He was like a part of northern Africa. He was African descent. His skin was apparently very, very dark.
Yeah.
Again, guys, like I know in our Western eyes we think everybody is like got more of a pale skin, but
Right.
it's just not true.
Yeah.
Athanasius was apparently very, very dark skinned as an African, to the point where that was actually his nickname, and he was also very short. But he like ran for his life. But the thing with Athanasius is that he had a way of speaking that was, I don't know how it's almost like the way it's almost like the way we describe the curb of the law. Like, it's like bumpers when you bowl. You know, he's like, well, you can go over here, but don't go too far. You can go over here, but don't go too far. It's somewhere in the middle. It's like we're not really sure, you know. You know, and so if you ever read through the Athanasian Creed, you see this, right? It's all there. It's like, you know, he'll say, you know, the Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. That's one side of the bumper. But then he says, but not three gods, we have one God. And that's the other side of the bumper.
Right.
And then he'll say, the Father is not the Son is not the Son is not the Spirit, the Father is not the Spirit. But yet, we still only have one God, not three gods. One, you know, and so it's like he's laying out the bumpers so that you go back and forth, the back and forth.
That's
that's
a Lowry loop, right?
I am seriously going to have a whole lesson with you on the Lowry loop and what it is.
I just like throwing it in.
I know you do. It's hilarious.
Because he keeps going, you know, kind of in a circle, back and forth, you know, right? Yeah. Lowry loop. Okay. Anyway,
no.
Yeah. So, yeah, I see what you mean though, like contrasting statements, but I mean that's what it is, yeah.
And so that, and if you read the Athanasian Creed, that's kind of the way it works. It kind of goes back and forth and back and forth, and now the funny thing is Athanasius did not write the Athanasian Creed. It was written well after he was dead.
Oh.
But it was written so much so in his style that when the council accepted, they just titled it the Athanasian Creed. Even though he didn't write it.
Oh, okay.
But it was definitely in his style.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was written after he had died. So yeah, no, he didn't write it. But it was written in the same styling that Athanasius wrote.
So are there lots of other creeds out there that like, or I mean, as far as ones that, I mean, I just mean not ones that technically maybe we would do, but are there other ones that like that you have heard of that are?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Sure, yeah. There are other ones. I don't know of any real in particular. Because to be honest, I just don't look at other creeds per se.
Right.
But again, any statement that you have where you're going to say, I believe, you know, this, that is a creed.
Yeah.
You might not call it a creed, but it is a creed.
Yeah.
Which means, there's all kinds of creeds out there.
Yeah. I just wonder, and I mean, so these are old.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're very old.
Yeah.
So no one at any point has been like, you know, we're not going to change what we believe, but like maybe just, you know, spice it up a little bit with some of the some of the terminology or something, and do a new one, or no one's had a council where they're like, you know, there's some other, you know, there's some like Joel Osteen or something. It's like we're just really going to make a creed that really sticks it to him, and then we're going to call it the.
Well, but actually, you bring that up, like, right? Joel Osteen has a creed.
Right? Yeah,
Remember, he holds up the Bible
Yes,
and he says, "This is my Bible," and all this stuff. It is who I say I am, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever he says, that's a creed.
Yeah,
like he's having everybody say it in unison. He's saying a statement that he believes. Whether or not he actually believes it's a whole other story.
Right.
Sorry, I had to throw it. We did a review of his sermon, which one of these days we'll publish it as kind of special. We're saving it for a special occasion. But anyway, but yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's a creed,
right?
That's a creed. So.
Yeah. It's just that's interesting. I wonder because I assume. They probably don't feel like you need to make a new creed because that's what we believe. So
yeah,
there's not really a reason to revamp it, I guess. But that's,
I
just wonder. I just wonder if that's
you could make a new creed if you. But I'll be honest with you, it's super hard. Like it's not.
It's a really hard industry to break into.
Well, it's not. It's not even that it's a really hard industry to break into. It's like. I mean, again, just sit down and make a statement that is different than all the other creeds. About something that is going to be central to your faith, and make it a statement, and get ready because every nuance is going to get picked up on,
right?
And you got to make sure that every nuance is right and correct.
Yeah,
that's hard. It's easier said than done. It sounds really super easy, but sit down and just try to do it. My guess is you'll get like 2 lines in, and then you'll be like, "This is too much."
That's it. That's interesting. I do like knowing a little bit about. I mean, I love knowing about the history of stuff, but to know, I mean, now every time I say begotten, not made, I'm going to think that was a little bit of we're really get this guy. It sounds like, I mean, not that they don't believe it, but just a little like, try to refuse that, dude. You know?
Well, I mean, again, begotten, not made. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. He was born, begotten, born or but he was not made. He was not created.
Yeah.
That is definitely a slap against the face against the Arians.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that to hear that.
And see, the Arians eventually grew in popularity. And that's actually what happened. They ended up chasing Athanasius out. Mm-hmm. And Athanasius was a bishop. I forget where he was a bishop at, but like they like stormed the area and chased Athanasius out. Now Athanasius went out into the desert. Now, here's another interesting question, an interesting thing. And this is where you see, like, people always say God works in mysterious ways. He really does.
Yes.
But sometimes you just don't see it. And it's like the very first actual monk that we really have is a guy by the name of St. Anthony the Great. Now, that is not to say that there were not other people that went out into the desert to live. There were tons of people that tried to venture out into the desert to live. There's actually this thought in the ancient world that to go out into the desert was like to do battle with demons.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that is what they thought. And so they would go out and they would do these crazy things. Like some of them would like stand on pillars and just stand there for the rest of their life. And I mean, like until they died, like that was just what they did. And so like you had these people do it, but like in terms of like a hermit, like somebody who's actually going to live there and have a structured devotional daily life.
Yeah.
Like that really wasn't done. And so St. Anthony the Great did it. He is considered like the father of all monks. And now his system was rather hardcore.
I'm sure first one.
I mean, right? Anybody who's going to like venture out into the desert like that. And so eventually it's going to be, they're going to have a few different attempts at trying to make it a little bit more palatable for larger groups of people. Because a lot of people just can't go out there by themselves. They just can't. They get lonely or whatever. They just can't do it. And so they're going to try to group together. And that's when they try to figure out how they can group together.
Yeah.
St. Anthony doesn't want anything to do with that. He's like, I'm out here by myself. I'm good.
Yeah. No, you go out with people, and that's how Burning Man happened.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, sorry.
But anyway, one gentleman is eventually going to make a book called A Rule, and it's going to actually be very productive, and it's going to be adopted by virtually all monks to some degree. I mean, to some degree or another. His name was Benedict, and his book is known as the Benedictine Rule. Which is why you still have Benedictine monks to this day.
Oh, interesting.
That's what they do. They're following Benedictine's rule. But anyway, St. Anthony the Great, He goes out in the desert. It's the first one that really does all this. When the Arians come and Athanasius has to flee, this man doesn't know how to live in the desert,
Yeah.
but he just so happens to know a guy. And St. Anthony the Great is a friend of his. He knows him. And so he runs out into the desert and he lives with St. Anthony.
Wow.
And so you go to yourself, like, why did God, call Anthony to go out into the desert? And you go, well, maybe he's crazy. Maybe he's this. Or maybe God put him out there because he knew that Athanasius and others were eventually going to need somebody to guide them in how to live in the desert.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it's kind of a crazy, awesome thought. But, it's like, like St. Anthony the Great. He, and honestly, I mean, you think about this, like with the Arians and what they did, without a powerful voice to combat that, I'm not saying it would have been, I mean, obviously nothing is impossible with God, but at the same time, it would have certainly caused a lot of huge challenges for Christianity. But one of the most powerful voices we had was St. Athanasius, and he was out there living in the desert where they couldn't find him.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're going to talk about awesome. Anyway, great stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hope that was different because I know we've talked about chants and stuff before.
Yeah, we've talked about chants and stuff, but this is creeds. This is different.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I need to make the distinction. Yeah.
But so by the way, and again, the ecumenical nature of the Nicene Creed, the fact that it was done by the Council of Bishops, and that it was basically this huge statement, like if you're a Christian, this is what you're going to believe. That's part of the reason I saved that for Communion Sunday.
Yeah.
Because on Communion Sunday, I feel like we need to be saying a statement that is very much in line with, like, okay, we're Christian, this is what we believe.
Right.
And it's not to say that the Apostles' Creed is not that. It is, very much so. But it's just a less of a summary. It's a short snippet of saying, okay, here's what I believe. Whereas a Nicene Creed is like, no, we're Christian. We're not this. Here we are. And it's like because it has that ecumenical nature, I tend to put that one with Holy Communion.
Now, are there, besides the three you talked about, are there other ones that like the LCMS welcome as creeds, or is that really it?
That's really it for us. I mean, we have the three ecumenical creeds.
And that's okay.
That the LCMS kind of goes along with. I mean, again, there are other places I think that try to do other creeds, but again, it's just super, super hard. So even sometimes we'll read a book or something, and it will have maybe different wording a little bit, but it's still the same creed.
Yeah, it's better. It's better that, I mean, whenever there's a new song that no one's ever heard of, it's always a little like people are a little nervous, to sing. And so it would be really kind of humorous if it was like, oh man, they got a new creed today. Oh man, everybody's like, I don't know this one. You got
visible of it. I did
darn
it again.
Oh darn. Okay. This one is so hard.
This one is so challenging.
Have one that rhymes, or something like, oh man, we have the rhyming one. I hate that one. Yeah, I think that'd be kind of funny. But no, that's interesting because I didn't know. I mean, I remember. Say what was the long one again? What was the name of it?
Athanasian.
Athanasian. But I remember like the times we've done that one. I did think to myself, like, where did this come from? And like, why are we doing it this week versus, why don't we do it other times?
And the other thing about the Athanasian Creed that's always really fun is right at the end, it says some uniquely, and they are very much Christian things, but they come off wrong, and especially in a Lutheran church. One of the things
wrong. Okay.
One of the things that he says is he talks about this is the Catholic faith.
Oh, yeah.
And that throws everybody off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that throws everybody off because everybody's like, wait just a second, we're Lutheran. It's like, well,
we're West Side. Or no,
he's using Catholic and again, before the church split, he's saying this is the universal Christian faith.
Yes.
And the word for universal is Catholic.
Right.
And so he's saying this is the Catholic faith. And the other thing he actually talks about is doing good deeds versus not doing good deeds and being judged off those deeds, which is like, but then you go and read the text of what he's actually saying, and he's actually talking again, because the main good works that we're judged off of is repentance, and repentance is something that the Holy Spirit gives to us, which gives us faith, through the Holy Spirit. And so like that's actually what he's referencing. But we're so trained as Lutherans to be like, good works, whoa, It's like we read that, we're like, I don't know if I can agree with that, but it's like, no, there it is. This is what he's saying. But it does take a little bit of explanation every time we do it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Well, do you have anything you want to talk about with your Revelations class that's been going on?
Yeah. It's fun. We finally made it to the book.
That's good.
Third weekend, we made it to chapter 1. I think we made it 8 verses.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. So we are just screaming through this book, everybody.
8 verses in.
Yeah, I think we're like 8 or 9. It's just screaming. Just screaming. But I tell you what I do enjoy, and one of the things that we focused on a little bit, what I focused on a little bit, was the fact that that John here uses some very unique grammatical structures. Mm-hmm. And he does it. He has this unique invocation, and that's one of the things that we talked a lot about. And so the first thing he does is he says, "The one who is and who was and who is to come." That's the unique grammatical structure. Yeah. It's a wild structure. You shouldn't really be able to do it in Greek. John somehow does it. It's amazing. It's awesome. But he does it to say, this is, the God of all there is, was, and ever shall be, our God the Father. And then he goes and he talks about the 7 spirits that are before the throne. And once you understand the number 7 signifying like the perfection of God, you realize he's talking about the Holy Spirit.
Oh, okay.
And then he talks about the one who is the first fruits of the dead, the one who was raised from the dead first, and he's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so it's an invocation of sorts, you know. And so that's one of the things that we really, really talked about. And again, I these are the kind of things that I really get fascinated about. And so, we talked about that kind of unique invocation. And I love the fact that he does that. Like, he starts out the letter by saying, like, look, here's who we're talking about. And here it is, So I can't wait to dig in even further.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to speed up a little bit. How much, I don't know.
We'll see. 9th verse is a good one. We're getting it.
Well, I mean, I might just jump right through it. But no, we will. We will be speeding up quite a bit as time goes on. But at least for right now, we finally made it into the book. But it's a real slow go. And again, I mean, just for those of you that are thinking, I'd like to go, but I don't know, like, just show up when you can.
Yeah.
And if you miss a couple weeks, it's okay. Like, I have some methodology to catch people back up. And a lot of that methodology has to do with some videos that I have access to that I am more than happy to share, but I'm sharing them in piecemeal fashion. That is to say, I'm waiting until after I get done with the lesson before I share the video, because I can't have people like running past me,
working ahead.
Yeah, we can't have that nonsense. So anyway, the point being is like, once I get past the content of that video, I will put that video actually in the app under the media section. We have a Revelation a box already there. Nice. Actually, if you go to that Revelation box right now, I posted a video, and it's a YouTube video of a man discussing end of times kind of stuff, eschatology as it's called, but end of time stuff. And then I also posted another video, and this one was from Vimeo, but this one was my professor. He's since been sainted. He's passed away, but he's the guy who wrote the commentary and everything that CPH uses, our Concordia Publishing House, that our Synod uses, and he was also my professor at seminary. And so it gives you a glimpse of who he was.
Right.
See the man behind the book who wrote the book.
Yeah.
And he was, Dr. Lewis Brighton was seriously one of the kindest, most gentlest people you'd ever meet in your life. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden he'd like just, he'd come down on you. But he was a Greek professor, in his heart of hearts. So that's what he spent most of his time doing. So anyway, and it's the video that I post is just an introductory video for his class.
Oh, nice.
You can actually watch the whole class, but I don't know. It might get lost because he does a lot of discussion in Greek because, again, Greek professor.
Right.
But you can watch the whole class. It's all posted online. But anyway, just to give you a glimpse of who he is, and he gives, in the first half hour, he talks about the class, obviously, and what you're going to do. But then he talks about how if you're a pastor, you should do these things, and this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you're supposed to study as a pastor. And it's like and that was him.
Right.
It was like, yeah, you're going to do your course, but here's some life advice.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way he did things.
There should be more of that, I think, when you're in college or in a, program like that. I think life advice would be helpful.
The only thing I would say, though, is like some of his advice I have discovered in my own ministry to be slightly unrealistic. And don't get me wrong, like I had another professor in seminary as well, and his advice was even worse. And that's not, he was a good guy. And I think he was probably a great pastor.
Yeah.
But I remember we had a little bit of a debate in the class, I remember.
Yes.
Because we were talking, and he was like giving your daily work schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you added it up, he got to spend maybe 15 minutes with his kid.
Yeah.
If you had a family, you like 15 minutes for your family. And I remember one guy raised his hand and goes like, no, like this is no good. Like when am I going to spend time with my kid? And the professor's like, well, bring your kid into your office. You can work and talk to him at the same time. And we're like, no, this is no good. Like, why not?
Well, well, we've had this discussion many times about, because like I studied music, and I had a professor of mine who showed up to one of our like combo gigs we did, and when I play drum set, I mean, I don't do this at church, but I spin my sticks a lot, and I throw them and catch them and do that sort of acrobatic thing here and there.
So awesome.
I don't know, right? Well, and honestly, because I was good at it, I practiced it a lot, and I got pretty good at it, and he came down on me like, that's not real music, and you're just doing stupid gimmick stuff, and you're just looking like you look like a clown up there. And he's just going on and on. But of course, all years later, it's like, yeah, but that's what gets people's attention. It was like, I mean, if you're playing recitals in like a hall, and a bunch of college students are like kind of forced to go see these recitals so they can get credit for their class or whatever. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's like you can be as boring as,
Yeah.
I'll get up. But it was terrible advice. It was like I kind of stopped doing that. And then years later, I'm like, no, that's dumb. It was like when I spend my sticks, people watch and go like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the point. I'm supposed to be entertaining. So again, if I'm playing drums for a church, I don't do that. Although sometimes it is almost hard for me not to, because I'm so used to it. But because that's not the point is not me trying to be entertaining. The point is, but
the differentiation between entertainment versus non-entertainment.
Yeah. Now I will say, if I'm playing drum set at my house and I'm playing like a worship song, like on YouTube or something, I do spend my sticks.
Oh my goodness.
Because I view it as,
oh my goodness gracious.
I view it as I'm not trying to entertain anybody, around me.
You're just doing it for fun.
I'm trying to worship God. I'm trying to, in worshiping, or I don't know, entertaining. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, sometimes you get some advice that's kind of like, that's not real.
And again,
really
I mean, like,
good.
so if you were to go back and watch, again, Brighton's lecture, what he says, and this is, and again, it's just like, it's great advice if you can do it, but good luck.
Right.
He's like, here's what you do. You get up, you're in the office by, say, 7:00 in the morning or whatever it is.
Oof.
He's like, you tell your secretary, no calls, no visits, no nothing. You shut your door, you study until noon.
Oh, wow.
Now,
well, that's why he can't see his kids.
Now, no, this is a different guy.
Oh, different guy.
This is a different guy. And so he's like, you study till noon. Now, here's the deal. After you're done, after it's noon, now realize that all that studying, that was not for sermon prep, that was not for, he says this in a later lecture, or at least he said it to my class. I remember him saying it because I remember going, really? But all that study is not for like Bible study prep. It's not for sermon prep. He says every pastor needs to have a heart after God's word, which I love. I love that about him. But holy cow, like 5 hours.
5 hours.
Right off the bat.
And no cheating. None of that goes into your sermon. Not a single thing.
No, it's not for Bible study. It's not for sermon. Just now, afternoon, eat lunch or whatever, and then you can do your calls and go visiting people, or then you can work on your sermons and your Bible. It's like holy cats. It's like I wish I had an hour to go. Okay, I'm just going to study.
Yeah,
like,
right.
And every now and again, maybe a couple times a week, I'll get that hour, and that's awesome. I love that. But then there's sometimes where I have like weeks and weeks where I don't get any of it, and it's like, what little study I can do, like I have time for, I get done. But that's also the benefit of working ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I work on my sermons. While I don't write my sermons until the week of, I do a lot of my prep work well in advance.
Yeah.
So that I can actually come and feel like I have some grasp of what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just like, oh man, he's just like, yeah, this is what you do.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I don't like to go to meetings. I'm like, oh man, I wish I had that.
Yeah. It is funny. I mean, I think maybe that's partly a generational thing too, because I mean, my generation is getting. I mean, to be honest, there's some people that I see in some of these jobs, like I'll just say it, like in music, because that's my thing. That back in the day, it was like you were there before school started because you need to get stuff ready, and then you're there till at night, or you have football games, or you have whatever you got to play for, and all these things, and basically it's like you're never home. And to be honest, the divorce rate is really high in that department because they're never home.
Yeah.
And it seems like my generation, all the people around my age, are starting to be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Like they're all just kind of like, I'll work my hours and I'll do my events, but I'm not going to just stay, for 7 hours and work on random stuff that I can just do tomorrow, or in their mind. So it's interesting.
It is an interesting thing, and I mean, honestly, I don't know what time we're at, but I mean, but like, at some point we should probably dig into this a little bit, because this is actually becoming increasingly a good topic. Like I watched a video the other day, and I think it was on like YouTube Shorts or something, where this gal was basically crying that working a 40-hour work week didn't really give her time to do all these extracurricular things that she wanted to do. And she was like, look, I got like an hour commute to work, and I got an hour back, and like 40 hours. Like by the time I get home, I'm exhausted. I barely have time to cook supper, and
you're exhausted. Yeah.
And she's going through all this, and like, of course, all the people either my age, millennials, and the older generation are all like, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the working world.
Yeah.
And then the other generation is kind of bringing out the points that like you're bringing out, which is like, yeah, your generation did that. And how'd that work out for you?
Yeah.
And it's like,
y'all happy?
Yeah. So there is a little bit of compare and contrast there that needs to be done. I will say though that one of the things that I've seen is like whenever my dad, I remember growing up with my dad, and it was like, okay, so my dad went to work. Usually it was a 40-hour work week, but sometimes it was a little bit longer. He was a machinist.
Yeah.
But when he came home, it was his time to work on his stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like we ever stopped working.
Yeah.
I always knew when Dad came home, it was time to work. We had to get going.
Yeah, right.
We had stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the way it was.
Yeah, it's I don't know. That's very interesting. We'll have to make.
Yeah, we gotta have to dive into that one later.
Yeah, it's too big of a topic.
It's a huge topic.
Mention at the end. I shouldn't have done that.
And we did, but it's okay. It's all good.
But I think we're running it. We need to probably get to church chatter.
Okay, it's church chatter time.
Church chatter time.
Church chatter time.
Are we just stalling because we don't know? We don't have anything.
No. Okay. So first of all, like a lot of people have been talking to me about the live stream. And by the way, everybody, I actually appreciate that. As much as I can at times get flustered and frustrated because the dumb thing just doesn't work the way I want it to work.
Right.
The reality is every time you guys tell me about something going on with the live stream, that enables me to problem solve and hopefully fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like we got the sound pretty good.
Yeah.
But then one of our cameras froze on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that itself is actually an easy fix, but it does mean that I need to train other people how to do it, so it's not just me.
Yeah.
Because obviously I couldn't go unfreeze it.
Speaking of that, if there's anybody out there or anyone you know who would like to get some experience working on live stream technology,
right.
and I will say that is honestly a very positive thing to know something about.
Oh, yeah.
I think all the time I do video editing as a side job, and it's been very, very nice for me. And that was something that people were like, what are you ever going to do with that? And then it's like, well, I have a job where I get to edit videos for a company.
Yeah.
And it does really well for me. So some of that, especially live streaming stuff, it's becoming very big that if you have any grandkids or you know any teenagers who maybe they don't have a ton going on, but maybe this would be a really great thing for them to learn about for the future, it would be very positive for them. It's a good education.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there.
So anyway, we had some of that. We also had some network issues there for a while, but I think we finally have that one kind of fixed. Still troubleshooting a couple little things here and there, but I think we got most of that fixed. And I know some of the people were talking about that because when your network goes all the way down, it's kind of like, oh no. But we got it. We figured it out. At least we figured some things out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of a lot of the happenings going on. Just in church in general. Now, of course, we know this Wednesday, tomorrow, in our case, is tomorrow. Like, it's Tuesday night. That's, again, I think I say that almost every week. I'm like, it's Tuesday night. It's Tuesday night.
By the way, yeah.
But like, so for us, tomorrow is Wednesday. We'll have service. The next Wednesday after that, February 14th, is, in fact, Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday and Valentine's Day.
And Valentine's Day. We're combining those two together.
Yes.
It's going to be great.
There's going to be face painting.
Face painting. Yep.
So come on. All right. Has that joke been made before or no?
I'm not sure if it ever has.
I don't know. I guess
it's gonna be
I should say everybody come to church on Valentine's Day. We got face painting.
We got face painting. Yep.
And lots of great, and we got exotic meats. So
that's right. We will have a meal after the service. It's going to be fantastic. But that also means that actually tomorrow, February 7th, and again, that's I don't know, depending on when you listen to this, but February 7th. Probably about 6:30 or so, we're going to probably burn the palm branches as we get ready for Ash Wednesday. That is where the ash actually comes from, is the palm branches from Palm Sunday the year before. And so we're going to I'll be burning those, and we'll be getting all those ready. And so that's always exciting. Now, our sermon series this year is Exodus. Super excited about this. Exodus really is the right one to go with. So a lot of times in Lent we talk about a suffering Savior, Jesus, and all the things that he went through on the cross, and that's absolutely accurate. But it's also the beginning and the movement of kind of the Passover. Mm-hmm. Those two things are combined in a sense.
Yeah,
and the Passover is the book of Exodus. And the better you understand Exodus, believe it or not, I think, in my opinion, the better you actually will understand the cross. Because there's a reason that Jesus dies on the Passover.
Right.
And, there's a reason that he dies on the cross. And so you're going to get to see a little bit of that connection. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we're always looking forward to the Seder meal, which is on Maundy, Thursday, which you guys will hear much more about that as it gets closer. But Maundy, Thursday, looking forward to that. And so, we got lots of stuff coming up with Lent coming up. But, so
that's exciting.
It is. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
So maybe I'll keep that for another episode.
Oh.
Never mind. I got an idea.
He's got a question he's going to ask next time.
Yeah.
Now write that down.
I know. I do.
Look, I'm so
because I'll forget. I know. I will. I pretended like I was writing something down.
He started to write something down and then looked at it and put his pencil down.
That's exactly, and that's my problem. That's how I am. So, And
earlier today, as we were walking up here to record, he said, I really need to start writing these questions down. and so there's context here. I promise I'm not trying to be bossy.
Yeah, it's been weak. I actually today my family's really busy right now, and I actually had a text message from my brother that I pulled my phone out and I started writing it, and I misspelled like 3 words in a row, like to the point where you can't even understand what word it is.
Yeah.
And I erased it and I tried it again, and I was like drifting off while I was writing it, and I got to the point where I was like, I'm gonna have to do this at another time. I just can't. I couldn't keep myself awake enough to just text him. So yeah, I've had it. It's been one of those days, I guess.
Yeah. It's all right. We've all had them. That's for sure. So anyway, I think that's actually all I have for us tonight.
Yeah.
Today, whatever time it is, wherever you're at. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. I guess we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.